It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everyone, where every week we seek inspiration from great men and women to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. And you are here with your hosts. I am Andrew Bernstein. You are Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
Oh, Andy, I am unbelievable, ready to discuss somebody who we both consider a minority of one. Real life hero on screen, on film, on stage, behind the camera as a director, and as a human being. He literally stood out in any crowd he was in.
That is correct. And we are discussing the inimitable Sidney Poitier,
Yes.
one of the great actors of his day or any day, and somebody that I would say is just a hell of a man.
Yeah. His book,
His
The
dates-
Measure of a Man, is absolute must-read autobiography, and so some themes, Andy, that we could talk about. The moral character. Where does that stand in a person's life? What makes somebody self-made as opposed to things outside their control having a big influence on their life, such as race, which he tended to deny. Survival skills. What happens when someone puts you in a position where your life is literally in danger, and how do you react to that? And how do you channel that into your professional career? And then when people who are supposed to defend you attack you, how do you deal with that? And last thing, Andy, acting and real life. What's the intersection between the two of those? So lots to talk about here with Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we should start out with his dates. Lived a good long life, 1927 to 2022. So I think it was 94 when he passed away. And a number of notable things about his life. But maybe we should first touch on his childhood. He was born in Miami, right? His parents were Bahamians.
So yes, from the Bahamas, his parents, and the father would do shipping. He rowed his boat through storms of the Bahamas to Miami, and while he was there on business, 2 months early, Sidney Poitier was born. 3 pounds. Okay,
yeah, he's a premium.
They did not expect.
He's automatically a U.S. citizen born in Miami.
But that makes him so. Right. There's some good that came out of this. The father did not think he'd survive, and he comes with a shoebox ready to bury his son. Can you believe this, Andy? Because they had prior, Reggie and Evelyn, or the parents, had children die at childbirth. So Sidney was born. He had some something to prove. And Andy, listen to this literal sink or swim mentality. His mom would take him out to the water when he's, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years old, take him out to the deep part of the water and then let go of him. Now he's got to swim back. And he would go as far as he could. Then when he would collapse of exhaustion, the father would pick him up, save him, give him back to the mother, then she'd drop him again. Okay. Well, can you believe this?
And toughen the kid if it doesn't kill him.
Oh boy, so that is a life lesson here. And he was always a good swimmer. Spent much of his life in the water. Yeah, but this is preparing him for childhood life. And Bahamas were dirt poor town. Basically, family moves to Miami, or they send him to Miami when he's still young. I can't remember, like 10, 11, 12 years old.
So this is the 1930s when Jim Crow is still rampant in Florida.
Yes. And a pivotal moment in his life was he's in Miami, and he has some clothing at a cleaner's that he was going on a trip the next day, and the clothing wasn't ready. So they tell him to go across town to the other cleaners to pick it up. They're not ready. There's a bus strike. He starts walking back home, and unfortunately 2 racist cops see him, pull him into an alley, and tell him, he explains what he's doing in in this neighborhood. And Andy, they force him to walk 50 blocks with a gun, promising if you turn around, we're going to shoot you. So he's knowing that this rage, imagine when, and he says in his book, you have time to think. If walking 50 blocks with someone having a gun pointed, it gives you time to think, to be outraged, but not to act on it. And this is what I mean by survival skills. Like nobody wants to be in these kinds of situations, but how do you turn those around and put them into channel that outrage and that introspection that you go through your mind? You know, it's something for us to think about early in his life that he was able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me, you know, that kind of terrible injustice heaped upon an innocent man reminds me that he said he wanted to play these kind of hero roles that he
Yes.
played so well.
Yes.
You know, to even it's during this is, you know, he's at his peak as a great actor in the 1960s. And you know, there's still terrible injustice against Black Americans in the 1960s. And he wanted to show the world on screen, you know, Black heroes, a Black man who's a hero, not, you know, rather than a morally flawed character.
Right.
So he said he said it would have been, he said, you know, as an actor, it appealed to me to play a villain, you know, or somebody who's somebody who's morally mixed, because it really, you know, it widens my range, you know, as an actor, and he would have been, I'm sure he would have been great at it, but he wanted to project a morally upright, you know, heroic Black man, you know, to show the world this, and you know, and he did it. He did it superbly, and so in that social context, I can understand why he made that choice. In fact, I can always understand why somebody chooses to be a hero. So in any social context, but especially in the one that he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. We'll unpack some of the way he went into that. But he's 16 years old. He's in Miami, and he gets on a bus to come to New York. Second grade education, $3 in his pocket, and he's like, I need to start over. And he's washing dishes, and then he sees an ad in the papers for a Negro theater club, and nobody can understand a word he says because he's got this Bahamian accent. And so he watches news reporters and starts listening and practicing over and over his accent to get an American, you know, accent where people can understand. He's washing dishes. He gets a couple of bit acting roles on stage, and now, Andy, coming up in his book, the way he describes it, he's offered a role that would pay well. Okay, now he's got a wife, he's got a family, you know, that he's starting up in Harlem, and he's washing dishes, and he loves acting. He loves the challenge of it, but he turns down this role, and the agent, his name is Martin Baum, calls him up about 6 months later. He says, you know, Sidney, this wasn't really a bad role. And Sidney tells him, you know what, the character, it didn't portray what I want to be, somebody with an upright moral character. And the agent says, if that's what you want, I want to be your exclusive agent. Okay, Martin Baum. And together, and then his career started taking off. Then he started getting these roles, Andy. First big one. I love this movie. I've seen it since I was a kid. Blackboard Jungle.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's 28, but he plays a high school student. Okay, 1955, the start of rock and roll. The first scene in the film, they put the song "Rock Around the Clock" on, and that was
Bill Haley in the Comets.
That's right, Bill Haley in the Comets, and he earns $750 a month, Andy, for this role. And you would think after that, you know, after being on the big screen with Glenn Ford as the teacher, Vic Morrow was one of the students.
Combat
punks,
the old Combat TV series, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he's out of work shortly thereafter because, unfortunately, writers were not writing enough roles for upstanding Black actors, and he did not want to play these other, these subservient actors, which is what those roles,
Right.
what most Black actors got were more subservient roles, and
Yeah,
so that was a change in his life.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. I just want to say that there was so much racial prejudice against Black Americans. I can remember even as a kid in Brooklyn, never mind in Selma, Alabama, hearing all these racial slurs and everything from from my peers and my extended family. But so the racial stereotype of Blacks are lazy, they don't want to work, Blacks are unintelligent, Blacks is going to go on welfare. Blacks criminals, they're going to steal and stuff. And Sidney Poitier wanted to shatter that stereotype and show show somebody who's a morally upright hero, and he did it so well. Blackboard Jungle, terrific movie. Shortly after that, he made the Defiant Ones with Tony Curtis.
Right? Yes, with Tony Curtis, which was, so as society was changing, Sidney Poitier was on the forefront. Like, he was playing these roles that allowed societies to change. So he's in jail with a racist white guy, Tony Curtis, and they both escape, and they're handcuffed to each other, and they have to deal with it. Imagine that. I mean, what a great setup for a conflict. Andy's the conflict is the essence of storytelling, and throughout this time, they're trying to deal with each other, but they really both want to be free. And if you remember the last scene in the movie, they're running to catch a train to get their freedom, and Poitier is faster. He makes it on the train, and he's got his arm stretched out for Tony Curtis, and Curtis is not fast enough, and he lets him go. And then Poitier could stay on the train, which is what certainly a lot of Black audiences criticized him for not staying on the train, leave it. But instead, no, he jumps off and is with Tony Curtis at the end, basically leaving the message that it's kind of open to interpretation, but they had become friends over this period of time. They had looked out for one another, and it was another radical change in film history in that sense.
And I mean, to me, what the actions of the Sidney Poitier character show is race doesn't matter.
That's
the Tony Curtis character has overcome his racism by this time in the story, right?
Yes,
he's come to respect the Sidney Poitier character. They bond. Race doesn't matter. We're human beings. We're friends. That's what That's what I mean. Other people might interpret it differently. That's how I saw was a powerful message in the 1950s. Late 1950s. Powerful message today or any time. But it was very well done in that movie. I think they were both nominated for Best Actor.
Both nominated, and David Niven ended up winning. And
was that for separate tables?
Separate tables, yeah. So it was, but here is now again world recognition. I just want to backtrack. So when he left the Bahamas, he went 8 years without even communicating with his parents, which is a long time, from 16 to like 26 or so, and 24. And he said he didn't because he didn't have money to send, and he would never, his kind of the mode was, if you're not sending money, you're not writing, which is definitely not the right thing to do. But the first time Andy, his mom, sees him on screen, realizes what he's doing. She had never known from the Bahamas. I mean, back in the 30s and 40s, Bahamas was really primitive, certainly by today's standards. But his mom sees him on screen, and somebody hits him, and she yells out at the screen, "Hit him back, Sidney!" Hit him back. Like, she had no idea that it was not like for real, it's just one of those things. But it crosses over into this idea of what is real life and what is acting. And Poitier is taking all of these concretes that he has from real life and all of these different emotions and putting them into his roles. The next time he changed things. Okay, so he's an equal with a white racist in Defiant Ones. Next big one is Lilies of the Field.
Lilies of the Field. Yeah. Yeah, that's a classic film. right? He
I
won
got my
Best
lilies
Actor.
here. Carrie Ann loves
Yes.
lilies, so I buy them for her, and I'm like, for Sidney Poitier, I'm gonna.
Wow, you're
have
gonna
the
support these lily white guys when we're talking about Sidney Poitier? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he was
Oh,
the the first black actor to win the Oscar for
best.
Best
Yeah, best.
Actor.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
is
I mean,
that's a powerful movie. That's a
it
that's
is.
a
It
terrific
is.
film.
Yeah.
The clash. I forget the actress who played the Mother Superior, but the clash of
Mhm.
wills between those two characters forms the centerpiece of that film. It's
Yeah.
very well done.
Yeah.
Then East German, they escape from the communists, right? Nuns, and they have some
Yes.
parcel of land in the desert in Arizona somewhere, and they want Smith. They call him Schmidt. The German Schmidt.
Yeah. He's just
And
driving his car by,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and
He's
it's just.
and they want him to come to their services, but he's explained to them, I'm Baptist. I'm not a Catholic, and there's a lot of. And then there's what was that? The contractor who's calls him
Yeah.
boy, and he's a
Yeah.
racist. But
Yep.
but
Yeah.
Sidney Poitier's upright, the character Schmidt, as
Yes.
the nuns call him, his upright moral character and his can-do ability, his expertise and ability,
Yeah.
not only wins over the nuns, but they weren't racist to start with, but wins over the racist contractor and becomes he gains
Yes.
the respect of
That's right.
of
Over and over again. That's what he's doing on screen.
we
So
see
as
a
the
number of
culture
his movies, yeah.
as the culture is changing, Andy, we're seeing a concrete example of it. And by the way, you mentioned, he says time and time again in his autobiography, his race is accidental. That's not chosen. But
Yeah.
what is chosen are the roles he chooses to reject and to accept, and the way he lives his life, what kind of human being
absolutely.
he will be.
Over and over and over again in his films, we
Yes.
see him portraying brilliantly. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
These morally upright black men who break down racial barriers by means of one, their strength of character, and two, their ability in what they do. And we see over and over again white racists coming to respect him and moving off center away from their racist beliefs. And so he's breaking down barriers is what he's doing. And while being a great actor and able to entertain us in these films, doing both simultaneously and both effectively, he's on my short list of one of the greatest actors in film history.
I agree, Andy. I've been watching him, since some of my earliest memories is just my whole family sitting around the small black and white TV. And so now we got to go to 1967. All three, spent some time on each one of his three
Oh my God,
revolutionary films.
Let's rattle them off together, and then we discuss them individually. To Sir with Love, right? In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
I mean, three magnificent films. Reminds me, that 40 years later, what Babe Ruth said in 1927 when he was holding out for some amount of money, and some reporter said, that's more money than the president makes. And Babe said, well, I had a better year than the president.
Better year. Nobody had a better year in 1967 than Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, those were the three highest grossing films of the year, weren't they?
Yes, they were. They absolutely were. And again, in his book, he gives a little bit of backstory. Let's do on each one. Let's do To Sir with Love. Lulu, the song, I just remember that came out and you would hear it all the time. And he's an engineer and that's what he wants to do, but he has some teaching background, and they put him in with these hoodlums. It's somewhat of a reprieve of the Blackboard Jungle, but now he's in the front of the class instead of in the back of the class.
It's interesting because later on, we get all these great Teacher in the Hood movies. Stand and Deliver is one. Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer. There's all these Teacher in the Hood films based on true stories. And generally, not always, but the teacher's a white guy. Jaime Escalante was Chicano, Morgan Freeman, but sometimes there's a white guy, and he's having a positive impact on Black kids or Latino kids. But To Serve with Love reverses that, right? Here's the Black teacher, a man of upright moral integrity and great knowledge, with a lower class slum, white kids from the other side of the tracks. Were they in London, or I don't remember what the city was. Other side of the tracks, slum kids, wise asses, punks, thuggish kind of mentalities. And what a positive impact, this Black teacher has on these white kids.
It's just a fabulous movie, and just watch it. Okay, move on to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So the backstory with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I think Stanley Kramer was the producer, and he has this idea for a film, and he tells the financiers, he's like, look, we have Sidney Poitier, we have Spencer Tracy, we have Katharine Hepburn. It's going to be fabulous. And they're like, okay, what's the movie about? I'll tell you later. Basically, it's just these three blockbuster actors and actresses. You're going to love it. Okay. When they finally see the script,
these are three Olympians, Olympians. Hollywood history.
Olympians.
Yeah. All three of them.
Poitier talks in his book about the first time he goes to see Katharine Hepburn, rings her doorbell, and silence, like he's a nobody. Okay, and he's not even sure if she's in character or if she is just, he knows everything he's doing, he's being judged. Every word he says, every movement, every gesture, he's being judged. That was the mother that Katharine Hepburn played. But he also says these Hollywood elites, which Tracy and Hepburn certainly were, and they could be liberal. That's what he says in the book. And I despise that term if people don't define what they mean. They might be slightly to the left politically, but they probably don't know many Black people who, maybe they're servants, but they don't invite to dinner. So Katharine and Spencer Tracy, somewhat similar experience when he went to his house. So they're judging him, they're preparing him for this role. And it's interesting when we talked about Raquel Welch's first interracial, sex scene. This is the first interracial kiss, which happens in a rear view mirror. You don't even see, they don't even have the whole screen. But so Poitier is a doctor who's in love with the daughter of this prestigious white couple. And guess who's coming to dinner? She's telling them all about, she's telling her parents all about this wonderful doctor who she met, and the door opens and Hepburn sees.
Yeah, she left out the detail that he was a Black guy.
Yeah, yeah. Because it didn't matter to her. Nor should it. Nor should it. But okay, so that upsets the apple cart. And now in the heat of the night, oh man.
Well, hold on a second. Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead, Andy.
Blockbuster. Yeah. But guess who's coming to dinner? So who's the actress? What's her name? Catherine Houghton, the actress who played the daughter.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, actually. But I don't want to get it wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, so her parents, the white family, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, object on racial grounds. But so did his father, as I recall in that movie.
Yes,
Sidney Poitier's father did not want him marrying a white girl.
Yeah.
Right. And there was so there was a lot of racist stereotypes here about you got to stay with your own kind, and that sort of stuff. And the movie dramatized very effectively a powerful theme, and that is we're the humankind. How much pigmentation we have in our skin is a detail. Man and a woman, as well as friends go, colleagues, neighbors, it doesn't matter, and including romantic love. A man and woman fall in love. It doesn't matter what race they are, how much pigmentation they have in their skin. What matters is moral character, and the movie shows it, and they show the girl's parents, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, coming around. It shows Sidney Poitier's mother, talking about romantic love, and the fathers have forgotten what it was like to be young and fall in love, and the families finally approve when they recognize race doesn't matter. There's only one race.
Yeah.
Race. That's what's so good about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah, Andy, a direct quote from Sidney Poitier, right, plays right in. He says, "I never had an occasion to question color. Therefore, I only saw myself as what I was, a human being." So that's the race we all are, human race.
Yeah, that's
it. That's all that matters. Okay, don't fight about try going into different tribes as that's going to make you better or worse.
Right. There was that great Star Trek episode, I think it was the original show, where the Enterprise landed on a planet where all the residents of the planet, half their face was white and half was black, right?
That's right.
But half of the population, the right part was white and the left part was black, and the other half, the left part was white and the right part was black, and they hated each other. They got to fight to the death over this. And it was a great episode, really showing the insanity and the irrationality of any form of racism.
Yes, actually, Thomas Walker Worth in his integrations talked about Gene Roddenberry, and he brought up that episode. But Andy, you got almost 100% right. It was 90% had the face on the right side, and only 10%. So it actually equaled America, where the minority were the blacks, but they hated each other, and it's still totally unnecessarily, but over the degree of this the way your face, which side of your face is what. But they were clearly addressing that issue in that episode, but Andy,
I haven't seen it in many years, but they addressed it very effectively, as I remember.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I also do want to go back to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. On his family, on Sidney Poitier's family, where they didn't like it as well. That was something Frederick Douglass ran into later in his life, when he was half white, his father was white, his mother was black, and he married at a young age. He married a black woman, and then later on in life, he met his first wife died, and his secretary was white, and he ended up marrying her. And that must have caused a
lot of problems.
And both sides, his own children kind of shunned his new wife, and clearly her family had problems. They were these wealthy, white people. So Douglas was such a trailblazer, in the 19th century, and now we're seeing, Sidney Poitier. But what it reminds me of, Andy, is how far we've come. Okay, to today's date. I mean, this would be completely unheard of in today's American culture, to have it that stark, where a majority of the population, actually buys into this. Yeah, there were certainly little segments, and they're getting smaller and smaller by the day, where that is like really upheld and in your face. But anyway, I want to go on now to In the Heat of the Night with Rod Steiger. Oh boy.
A brilliant Rod Steiger, a great Rod Steiger. Even Sidney Poitier said, I was so impressed by Rod Steiger's performance in this film. Both of them were great.
And Steiger, what he did is he stayed in character while even being off the set.
Oh, is that right?
He completely stayed in character. Poitier knew that was the case, so there wasn't additional tension that spilled over into private life. So when Poitier is given the script, he reads it, and in case you don't know, so he's a Philadelphia,
Mississippi boy.
Crime takes place in Mississippi,
Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from the north, well dressed, but he's caught at a train station the night of a murder, and Rod Steiger is a bumbling, detective who totally assumes that it's this black man who did it, pulls him in for questioning, and Mr. Tibbs, the Philadelphia police officer, sees that this is this is such a catastrophe. So they end up working together. But Andy, in the script, there's one scene when they go to a wealthy Southerner, racist Southerners, to his property, and Sidney Poitier asks him a question. He's basically saying we're somewhat accusing him of committing the murder, and the wealthy white racist slaps Poitier, and when Sidney read that, he's like, I'm not going to stand for this. I understand he's acting on his values and his tradition, but my values demand, and he said, this has to happen, this is not negotiable, that I slap him right back.
Right.
And it happens, and it's the most gripping thing. I don't know how many scenes in film history had as much drama, Andy, in 1967 when a black guy slaps a white, wealthy landowner right back.
And in Mississippi, though,
yes, in Mississippi,
in front of in front of the law. And the racist says to the Rod Steiger character, "Did you see that? What are you going to do about it?" And Rod said, "I don't rightly know. I don't know what I'm going to do about it."
And he said, there was a time when I could have had you shot. And this is what I mean, Andy. We're not in that time anymore where this stuff is tolerated. We have come a long way where this stuff is. It's not.
We have, except on the political left, which we're going to get to in
after that. Yeah, but the fallout. So yeah, this was, the height of artistic genius, integrity. I mean, what a film.
I recommend anybody, if you haven't seen it in the heat of the night, see it, like yesterday. It's on Amazon or, some streaming service, you can find it. It's a magnificent film. Did it win Best Picture Oscar that year? I forget.
Oh boy. I don't remember. I
don't remember. But I want to say something about the Rod Steiger character, the redneck sheriff, because he's a racist, and he's not real good homicide investigator. He's kind of a bumbler, like you said, but he's an honest cop. That's what elevates him. And he comes over the course of the story to see not only how the Sidney Poitier character is being persecuted, but what a brilliant homicide investigator he is. And in the end, he's carrying his bags right to the train station.
Yes.
Great, little sign of respect that he has. And again, you see the Sidney Poitier character and that breaking down barriers, showing the Rod Steiger character and a lot of other, racists in Mississippi, what a black man is capable of in terms of character and in terms of ability in his profession, being a top-notch homicide investigator. And he's providing the imagery for the world, for anybody, white, black, Asian, Latino, biracial, whatever, anywhere in the world, of what a black hero really looks like and how possible this is. Projecting it brilliantly, opening roads for decades later, actors like Denzel Washington, who also projects a real man of integrity brilliantly.
Who was his idol. Sidney Poitier was Denzel's idol. They had a fabulous relationship, over the course of Denzel's life.
By the way, I should mention, by Denzel Washington's time, turn of the 21st century, that Denzel Washington usually plays the same kind of character, morally upright hero, and he does it brilliantly. But he could play a bad guy. In Training Day, I think Denzel Washington won Best Actor for that. In Training Day, he plays a bad guy.
He did,
but by the 1990s or 2000, you have a lot of, like
he opened the door. Yeah, he opened the door to.
We've seen a lot of perceptions on the part of white Americans change. And you can see you have black guys as heroes all the time.
Morgan Freeman, Danny Glover, Wesley Snipes, just on and on. That Poitier opened the door for them. Denzel, I think, being the top.
Yeah, Denzel Washington played so many morally upright roles. But by now you could have a great black actor playing a bad guy. And it's and it doesn't undermine the recognition that black Americans can achieve all kinds of great things, like Sidney Poitier and Denzel Washington portrayed on screen so many times and so effectively. Heat of the Night, magnificent film. And really, Again, it really shows it's this like a leitmotif, Robert, that runs through his career. Race doesn't matter. Character matters. In specific context, ability matters. He's a doctor, he's a very, very accomplished MD in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. He's a brilliant homicide investigator in Heat of the Night. He's a top flight teacher into Sir with Love. Ability matters. Moral character matters above all. Race doesn't matter. It's like a theme that runs all through his best films.
Yeah. So let's move on to the question, Andy. What happens when the people who you would think defend you, now they turn around and they stab you in the back and they call you all these kinds of names? How do you react to that? What causes that, first of all?
Yeah.
And now we're talking about the September 1976 New York Times article. Clifford Mason, the playwright, writes about
why does white America love Sidney Poitier so? September 1967, when he's at the height, Poitier is at the height of his power. Now, this just makes my hair stand on it. I got to go on a rant, but I'm gonna stay calm. First of all, notice the way Clifford Mason phrases the question. Why does white America love Sidney Poitier so? Not why do Americans love Sidney Poitier, or why do film goers, or why do people? No, white America. He frames the question in racial terms. So right away, this guy Clifford Mason, we know right away he's a racist. And so let's get a definition here. What does racism mean? And I think the best way to define it is by reference to its antipode, colorblind individualism. The recognition that race doesn't matter. What matters is character. Each individual makes moral choices. Each individual, either gender, any race or tribe or nationality, has free will. We make moral choices. We judge individuals based on the moral choices that they make. And race is irrelevant. Racism, to put it simply, one way to put it very simply, to a racist, race matters. Race is important to racists. And race has especially... race is a determining factor of character to racists. White racists have traditionally thought, that blackness meant unintelligent, lazy, don't want to work, untrustworthy, et cetera, et cetera. Today, there's this virulent anti-white racism that's spewed forth from the political left that says, in effect, white people are inherently racist. It's like, well, it's hardwired into our character.
Anti-racist is the term, right?
Well, they're the most virulent racists of all. That race determines character, and white people are inherently bigoted and racist and hate non-whites and are exploitative of non-whites. You see professional psychiatrists writing essays in professional journals. Is whiteness a disease, or is whiteness a form of mental illness? So this is this is pure racism. Doesn't matter which race it's directed against. This is pure racism, and Mason has phrased his question so that he shows us race matters to him. He wants to know why white people, love Sidney Poitier. Now, I would raise the question: why do film goers love Sidney Poitier? And I would say because he's first of all, he's a great actor. You got, if I was going to criticize him, I would start out, honestly, give the full context. First of all, he's a great actor. There's no way around it. He's great. He's magnificent performer in these roles. He's up there with the best leading men, in Hollywood history. Whoever you want to mention, Clark Gable, Cary Grant, later on, Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks. I mean, the guys who were really, really, good in any number of roles. He's up there, as one of the best leading men. But and then all the issues that we just discussed, how he projects a hero, so man of upright moral integrity, so brilliantly. And then I say, well, then if I was like Mason, I want to critique him. Maybe I would say, he was such a big star. He could have pushed a little harder for interracial sex, and things like that. But I mean, it's a minor issue compared to the things that Sidney Poitier did. And this guy Mason calls him, I'm not even going to repeat, he drops the N-word several times. He calls him a showcase Negro. You know, and he doesn't use the term Negro. And it's like he's criticizing Sidney Poitier for projecting heroism so well. No, that's dead wrong. That goes even beyond racism. That's the anti-hero mentality.
Yes.
And here's the last thing I want to say on this, Robert. In the heat of the night, Virgil Tibbs, the Sidney Poitier character, is a vastly more intelligent, insightful, and able homicide investigator than anybody else in the universe of the movie. He solves the murder, which nobody else there could remotely begin to do. And so to Mason, since the victim was white and the perpetrator was white, the Sidney Poitier character is solving the white man's problems, and he's still subservient to the white man. And I'm like sitting there scratching my head and saying, what universe do you reside in? He's a homicide investigator. You understand that? And he's a brilliant homicide investigator, doing his job superbly. To a homicide investigator, whether it's Sherlock Holmes or Virgil Tibbs or Nero Wolfe or whoever it is, fictional or real, does it matter? To an honest man, does it matter what race the victim is? Does it matter what race the perpetrator is? No, there's a murder here, and I'm going to solve it, and he does brilliantly. He's a hero. 2 thumbs up. I can't. I could go off on this guy. This is pure racism. Is he solving the white man's problems? No, he's doing something that's very human. He's solving a homicide case. And he's a hero.
Yeah, Andy, I'll just say, just to put a cap on this topic, if I'm 7, 8 years old and I'm watching In the Heat of the Night, I want to be Virgil Tibbs. I don't want to be Rod Steiger's character, and I don't care who's white and who's black. I care who is competent and morally upright. Okay, it's just that simple. That's the part that's completely missed. And even as you said, even analyzing the title of the article, he was already, by this time he was active in the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King lauded him. So there was a percentage of blacks who liked the direction that the breakthroughs that Poitier was making. There was a substantial number. But of course, it takes this kind, and now the culture is changing, going towards the more militancy, which it's clear that that Clifford Mason was, and that he's not black enough. And now these black exploitation films come out, and Poitier is, sadly, there are no more roles being written. So the anti-hero, if we look even at American culture, sadly, it's pivoting for the worse.
Hold on a second though. There's those black exploitation films. I love Shaft.
Me too. I
think Shaft was a hero. Right?
Shaft and Superfly and Richard Roundtree. I mean, Isaac Hayes' music. I do too. But from Poitier's point of view, he did not. That was beneath him, and he didn't think it was.
It wasn't serious.
As morally upright as he was. And we talked before the episode. Friend Scott Holleran's piece on Sidney Poitier. He basically says Poitier shrugged. He went on strike against that mindset and refused to that article.
It's very possible. Scott Holleran is a good guy. He's a good friend.
Yes.
And what did I want to say? Oh, we should point out that article, Why Does White America Love Sidney Poitier? So that was published in the New York Times, September 1967. The New York Times is supposed to be, it prides itself on being progressive, and liberal, and supporting the rights of Black Americans. So here's a guy who's trailblazing, groundbreaking, doing great work, breaking down racial barriers, giving this vivid imagery of what a Black man as hero looks like. And they print this piece of trash, that criticizes him as a subservient, or the showcase Negro. And you dropping the N-word, that's necessary. that he's a showcase Negro, that he's he's pretty to look at. He plays a good guy, nice guy, but he's not willing to tackle the real racial animosity in the country. He's still subservient to the white man, educating white children, solving the homicide, of a white victim, white perpetrator. He's still, he's still solving the white man's problems like he's a house Negro. I mean, this is repulsive. It's just vile racist filth, and it's pure 20th century anti-hero mentality. And here's Sidney Poitier at the peak of his popularity. He's got the three highest grossing films of 1967. Every one of them a serious movie. Not one is
groundbreaking.
Popcorn.
Groundbreaking.
Not one of them is a pop. Now I love popcorn, thrillers and stuff, but every one has a serious theme, and it's always, it's always showing. I don't want to even use the term anti-racist because today that means racist. But the theme is always some variation on race doesn't matter, character matters, human ability matters, human relationships between honest people matters, the ability to promote human life matters, above all, moral character matters. There's always the theme is always some variation on that, on that principle. And here he's at the peak of his powers, and after that, he's still young. He's 40 years old, big star. Might have been the biggest star in Hollywood by that time, as a leading man. Steps back and doesn't do a lot of leading man roles for a long time. He does, and he's directing, he's writing, he's doing other things. He's leading a fulfilling life and having a career. But he stepped back, and Scott may be right. He may have shrugged, thinking if this is the slime bag culture that we're in. When I talk about casting, was it pearls to swine is the biblical reference? Casting pearls to swine for people like Clifford Mason and the New York Times. Bleep you. I got other things I could do with my life rather than serve as a sacrificial lamb for bastards like you. It's possible. It's at least possible.
Definitely, Andy. So last point, in his book, he actually has a section on causality. On cause and effect, and here's where the intersection between acting and real life. And how do you get these, how do you put into practice these units? And even in Scott's article, I knew this from the autobiography, Scott makes a point that knowing that he's got to walk 50 blocks with a gun pointed to his head gives him time to think, and he can channel that energy so that he automatically slaps the white racist in the heat of the night after he slapped himself. And Poitier says he learned so much about life from acting, and I think this is important because he makes this causal connection between the two. And I'm just thinking, like, for he never considered it like pretending. He says acting isn't a game of pretend; it's an exercise in being real. That's one of his things, and it just makes me wonder about people who. I think that's something that we've lost in the Hollywood era, where now I just think people who are advocating these causes, entertainers, they're used to reading other people's words when they get on big screen, and then they just read other people's words when they're being interviewed about their own, about status quo views and not going out and challenging. And this is another factor where I just thought Poitier stood alone, because he marched to his own drum. He was a minority of one. That's the way I look at him. He was a total individualist, because in any group he stood out first on a perceptual level, where he's a different color than just about everyone around, but then on a moral level, on a conceptual and moral level, where you see the stature of this man. And that's to me, that's enough to make this guy a hero from my childhood, earliest days, right up until today and into the future.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And there's one last thing I would add is, again, In the Heat of the Night, I think one of the best films I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. it's somebody, I don't remember if it's the Rod Steiger character or somebody else says to him, what do they call you up there in Philadelphia? And he says, they call me Mr. Tibbs.
Yes.
He says it with such conviction, you know, with such moral strength. He's demanding the respect that he deserves from these white guys. And it's similar, it has just as much power as the slap, you know. And so if anybody to say, yeah, well, he's subservient, he's playing roles that are subservient to the white man, you're just completely wrong. He's demanding respect that a good man deserves, regardless of skin color. That's huge. In the 1960s, and taking place in Mississippi. I mean, I don't want to sound like I think every white person in Mississippi was a racist. That's obviously unjust and false. But the racists certainly controlled the culture, you know, and they lynched, God knows how many innocent, you know, blacks during the Jim Crow era. He's demanding respect. And so that's how I think of, you know, of Sidney Poitier, morally upright man, demanding the respect that a morally upright man deserves. Race be damned.
I say we call him Mr. Poitier in response to that, into a legacy of incredible work, and the measure of a man and the moral character is what.
We got to salute the great man here. Thank you, Mr. Poitier, for all of your achievements, both professionally as an actor and morally as a human being. We salute you. Thank you for entertaining us while at the same time edifying us. So I think we could. I think we've done the great man justice. And
me too.
All right. And so remind everybody, you're watching the Hero Show. Thanks for your attendance, you know, and your interest in the show. And Rob and I will be back again next week to study and analyze another great man or woman on the Hero Show. So we'll see you then, everybody.